influence waned, blending into Roman vales and forgotten groves, the myths endured, not as rigid truths, but living breaths in poetry, art, and stars. Heroes fell, gods retreated, yet their essences linger. Zeus in thunder's rumble, Athena in wisdom's spark, Aphrodite in love's fleeting glow. Let these tales dissolve into the night, carrying away the day's weight, leaving only peace. If you're still with these whispers, share where you're listening from and the hour's gentle mark. May the myths cradle you to sleep, where new stories await in the dawn's light. Congratulations, you've just awakened in the gritty heart of ancient Rome. Not amid the opulent sprawl of a palace or a sun-kissed marble villa where servants fan you with peacock feathers and drizzle honeyed figs into your waiting mouth. Oh no, fate has dropped you squarely where the real pulse of the empire throbs, in the teeming underbelly, where plumbing is a whispered myth, walls tremble like they're nursing a perpetual hangover, and your upstairs neighbor stomps around with the thunderous grace of a gladiator practicing his victory dance on creaky floorboards. Welcome to your insula, the Roman equivalent of a towering apartment block, though island is its literal translation, hinting at how utterly isolated you'll feel in this sea of chaos. If luck's on your side, you're on the 4th floor. Any higher, and you're practically nesting in the god's attic, where the roof leaks divine disdain. These structures are slapped together from brick, splintered wood, and sheer audacity, swaying gently in the breeze like drunken sentinels propping each other up. Their stability? About as reliable as a stale crust of bread left out in a storm, crumbly, unpredictable, and prone to total collapse. Your room is a glorified nook, roughly the size of a modern broom closet, crammed with a rope-strung cot that's more straw than comfort, and a blanket that's absorbed the essence of every weary soul who's collapsed upon it before you. The walls press in close, damp and mottled with mysterious stains, so intimate that stretching out lets you brush both sides without shifting. Windows? A luxury for the lofty. Light sneaks in through a sliver under the door or a fist-sized hole some previous tenant renovated with an ill-aimed broom. Privacy is a joke. You're sharing this sliver of space with 2 others, one hacking away with the dramatic flair of a tragic poet reciting his final verse. Spoiler, it's no performance. It's likely the cough of doom, courtesy of the ever-lurking specter of tuberculosis. As dawn creeps in, the symphony begins, not with melodic birdsong, but the guttural rumble of wooden carts clattering over cobblestones, vendors bellowing about olives, fish, and loaves that might have been fresh in a past life. A donkey brays like it's auditioning for the underworld's chorus. Children wail with operatic despair, and somewhere below, a heated debate over taxes erupts like a mini Vesuvius. You stretch tentatively. Bad move. Your back protests with a crack like ancient papyrus snapping in a gale, a sharp reminder of a life bent by endless toil and a diet heavy on beans, grit, and quiet resignation. Outside, the morning assault intensifies. A whirlwind of senses where chaos reigns supreme. The air hums with vendors' cries, beggars' pleas, and the casual plop of oxen relieving themselves mid-stride. Flies buzz in swirling armies over fish stalls, a rooster meets its dramatic end nearby, and the faint sizzle of something dubious frying wafts through like a taunt from the fates. A child dashes past, smeared in what could be berry jam, blood, or a creative blend of both. Curiosity killed the cat, but in Rome, it might just kill you too.
You shuffle toward the communal bakery, clutching your grain ration like a talisman, a humble lump of barley flour wrapped in ragged cloth. The baker, a grizzled soul with flour-dusted brows, folds it into the mix. Hours later, you'll claim a small charred loaf, tough as leather, but warm as fleeting hope. Breakfast? A modest affair, perhaps a bowl of pulse, that thick gruel of boiled grains, bland as forgotten promises, maybe brightened by a rogue olive or a dash of garum, the pungent fish sauce that's Rome's dubious gift to the palate. No exotic fruits or creamy cheeses here, just sustenance to stave off the void, chewed in contemplative silence amid the din. Dressed in your single tunic, rough wool or linen, patched and perfumed with mildew, you tie it with a frayed rope and venture forth, left shoulder bared like a badge of humble existence. No deodorant, no finery, just you against the empire's relentless grind. The street awaits, a labyrinth of life, where every step is a dance with destiny, dodging carts, puddles of dubious origin, and the ever-present hum of a city that never truly sleeps. And this, it's merely the overture to your Roman day, where survival is the ultimate spectacle.
Since you've said next again, it seems you're enjoying the immersive storytelling journey and likely want to continue exploring the vivid world of ancient Rome, perhaps delving deeper into the daily life of its underbelly or shifting to another facet of its gritty reality. Given the previous response's focus on waking up in a Roman insula, I'll move forward with the next part of your day as a humble Roman, painting a picture of your struggles, encounters, and the city's chaotic pulse, keeping the tone evocative and soothing for drifting toward sleep. If you meant something else, like returning to Greek mythology, exploring another era, or using a specific tool, please clarify, and I'll pivot accordingly. For now, let's step back into Rome's bustling streets, where every moment hums with survival's song.
The streets narrow as you approach the Forum, hemmed by insulae leaning like gossiping elders, their upper stories threatening to kiss. A woman leans from a window, shouting insults at a cart driver who's blocked her view. Below, a soothsayer mutters omens, clutching a chicken's entrails like sacred texts. You dodge a cascade of slop from above, someone's lazy cave barely registers, and press on, the grain sack chafing your shoulder. The crowd thickens, a senator's litter sways past, carried by grim-faced slaves. A street urchin eyes your bread like a hawk circling prey. You clutch it tighter, knowing hunger respects no honor. At the Forum, Rome's grandeur and grime collide. Temples to Jupiter and Vesta gleam with marble, their steps worn by centuries of prayers, while merchant stalls sprawl like weeds, offering everything from silks to suspect sausages. You pause by a fountain, its water tepid but a mercy, splashing your face to rinse the dust. A nearby orator rants about taxes, his voice drowned by a hawker's cry for fresh figs sweeter than Venus's lips. You smirk. Venus would likely disagree. Your grain delivered, the baker tosses you a coin and a grunt, your wage for a morning's toil. It's not much, but it's enough to keep the landlord's threats at bay. Midday heat cloaks the city, and you seek shade by the temple of Saturn, where moneylenders and dreamers haggle under columns older than memory. You tear into your loaf, sharing a morsel with a one-eyed beggar who spins tales of gladiators he swears he fought beside. His stories of blood-soaked arenas, roars of the Colosseum, and beasts from lands you'll never see spark fleeting dreams of glory, though you know your place is here, among the dust and din. A priestess passes, her robes whispering of rituals you'll never witness, her eyes fixed on some divine horizon. You wonder if the gods notice you at all, or if you're just another ant in their sprawling anthill. As the sun dips, painting the sky with hues of bruised purple, you trudge back to your insula. The streets grow rowdier, taverns spill laughter and brawls, a flute player's tune tangles with a drunkard's song. You pass a graffiti-scrawled wall. Aurelia loves Marcus, next to a crude curse against tax collectors. At home, your nook awaits, its damp walls and creaking cot a familiar embrace. You share a bowl of pulse with your roommates, the silence between you heavy with unspoken dreams. The city's clamor fades to a distant hum, like the sea's murmur, and you lie down, the day's weight pulling you toward sleep.
Rome endures, its pulse your lullaby. Grit and glory, gods and grime. Let its rhythm carry you, soft as twilight, to a place where dreams weave new streets to wander. The Roman sun has dipped below the horizon, and the city's clamor softens to a restless murmur, like a beast settling for the night. You're back in your insula, the cramped nook barely lit by a flickering oil lamp that casts trembling shadows on the damp walls. The air is heavy with the scent of stale pulse and the faint tang of smoke from a neighbor's brazier. Outside, the streets hum with the low drone of tavern songs, the clatter of late carts, and the occasional shout of a watchman chasing shadows. Let this twilight world of ancient Rome enfold you, its rhythms gentle yet unyielding, guiding you deeper into the quiet folds of sleep, where the empire's pulse becomes a distant lullaby. Your day's labor, hauling grain through the forum's chaos, has left your limbs heavy, your tunic clinging with sweat and dust. The coin in your pouch, a single bronze sesterce, feels like a small victory, though it's barely enough for tomorrow's bread. You lie on your straw cot, the ropes creaking beneath you, and listen to the city's fading breath. Your roommates, already snoring, dream of fields they'll never own, or loves lost to the Tiber's flow. But tonight, Rome offers you a different path, not the grind of survival, but a glimpse into its undercurrents, the hidden stories that pulse beneath the cobblestones, where gods, ghosts, and mortals mingle in the dark. Pictured the Lupercalia, a festival you might glimpse tomorrow, when Rome's wild heart beats loud. Young men, stripped to loincloths, race through the streets, lashing passers-by with goatskin thongs, their laughter sharp as the crack of leather. It's no mere revelry. Old magic lingers in the rite, said to bless fertility and banish evil. Women line the paths, hoping a whip's sting will bring children or ease childbirth's pain. You've seen it before, dodging the frenzied runners, their eyes alight with something older than the city itself, a primal echo of the wolf that suckled Romulus and Remus. The tale of those twins, abandoned, nursed by a she-wolf, destined to found Rome, feels alive in these moments, as if the city's bones still hum with their myth.
Or consider the Subura, Rome's roughest quarter, just a street away from your insula. By day, it's a maze of butchers, brothels, and barbers where knives flash for meat or mischief. By night, it's a shadowland where thieves and lovers stalk, and the air carries whispers of deals struck and darkened alleys. You've passed its edges, catching glimpses of painted women beckoning from doorways, or the glint of a blade under a cloak. Once you overheard a poet, drunk on cheap wine, reciting verses to a crowd of urchins, his words painting gods and heroes in the grime. The Subura, like Rome, holds both beauty and danger, a reminder that Even in squalor, stories bloom like wildflowers through cracks in stone. The gods, too, linger close tonight. You've never seen their faces, but their presence haunts the city. A small shrine to Vesta, goddess of the hearth, sits at the insula's base, its flame tended by a neighbor who mutters prayers as she sweets. You've tossed a crumb of bread there, hoping for warmth through the coming winter. Across the street, a faded mural of Mercury, patron of travelers and tricksters, watches over a shopkeeper's stall, his winged sandals promising luck to those who dare to dream beyond these walls. And in the distance, the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus looms on the Capitoline Hill, its marble glowing under moonlight, a reminder that Rome's might rests on divine favor, or so the priests claim. You wonder if Jupiter notices your small life, or if he's too busy hurling thunderbolts at distant foes. Sleep tugs at you now, heavy as the Tiber's current. The city's sounds blur, a distant dog's bark, a lover's laugh, the soft clink of a neighbor's lamp being snuffed. Your cot, though rough, feels like a raft on a quiet sea, carrying you from Rome's chaos to a dreamscape where you might walk with heroes or barter with gods. Perhaps you'll dream of Aeneas, the Trojan who fled his burning city to plant Rome's seeds, his journey guided by Venus and harried by Juno. Or maybe you'll wander the underworld, where shades whisper of lives like yours, fleeting yet woven into the empire's endless tapestry.
The Roman night deepens, its air cool and heavy with the scent of smoldering braziers and the faint musk of the Tiber's flow. You lie in your insula's cramped nook, the straw cot creaking beneath you, its ropes groaning like the ghosts of forgotten tenants. Outside, the city's pulse slows to a restless hum, a tavern's last laugh, a cart's final rattle, the soft wail of a child hushed by a weary mother. The oil lamp's flicker dances on the walls, painting shadows that seem to whisper tales older than the city itself. Let Rome's quiet breath wrap you like a worn cloak, its stories soft and steady, lulling you toward the gentle tide of sleep, where the empire's echoes become dreams. Tonight, your mind drifts not to the forum's clamor or the Subura's grit, but to the unseen threads that bind Rome's people to their gods and each other, the rituals, superstitions, and whispered hopes that thrive in the dark. Picture yourself rising, not to labor, but to join the city's nocturnal pulse, where the ordinary meets the divine in small sacred moments. The stars above, sharp as augurs' knives, seem to watch, and the night invites you to wander its hidden paths. Step softly to the insula's base, where the tiny shrine to Vesta glows with a single flame, tended by a widow who lives 2 doors down. She's there now, muttering prayers as she sprinkles a pinch of salt into the fire, her hands trembling with devotion. You've seen her before, her eyes fixed on the flame as if it holds answers to questions you've never dared ask. Vesta's hearth is Rome's heart, they say. While her fire burns, the city endures. You toss a crumb of your dwindling loaf into the shrine, a quiet offering for warmth through the coming chill. The flame sputters, and for a moment you feel the weight of countless prayers layered in this small act, a chain linking you to every soul who's knelt here. Beyond the insula, the streets are quieter now, but never silent. You pass a corner where a faded statue of Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings, guards a crossroad. Someone's left a clay cup of wine at his feet, a plea for safe journeys or new ventures. You've heard whispers of Janus's power, how he sees past and future, how his gates open for war and close for peace. A night breeze stirs,
and you wonder if he's watching you, a lone figure in Rome's vast tapestry, your small life a thread in his endless weave.
Further on, you glimpse a lararium, a household shrine tucked in a baker's shop, its door ajar. Tiny figurines of the lares, guardians of the home, stand beside a statuette of Fortuna, her wheel promising luck or ruin with a spin. The baker, still awake, lights a twig of rosemary, its sharp scent mingling with the night's damp. You've no shrine of your own, your nook's too small, but you carry the lares in your heart, their protection a hope against the fires and fevers that haunt the insula's halls. You nod to the baker, who offers a tired smile, and move on, feeling the god's faint presence like a hand on your shoulder.
The Roman dawn creeps in like a thief, slipping through the cracks in your insula's walls with a chill that seeps into your bones. You stir on your straw cot, the ropes beneath you groaning in protest, as if echoing the city's own reluctant awakening. The air hangs thick with the mingled scents of yesterday's pulse and the faint, acrid smoke from a neighbor's dying brazier. Outside, the first carts rumble over cobblestones, their wheels grinding like the mills of fate, while a rooster's crow pierces the haze, summoning the day with unyielding insistence. Let this awakening wrap you softly, its rhythms a gentle tide pulling you from dreams into Rome's unyielding embrace, where every breath is a quiet victory over the night. Your eyes flutter open to the dim glow filtering through that eternal hole in the roof, a makeshift skylight courtesy of some long-gone storm or careless fist. The room, your sliver of empire, is still, save for the soft snores of your roommates, one curled like a question mark against the wall, the other sprawled with the abandon of exhaustion. You rise quietly, your tunic rumpled and stiff from sleep's sweat, and splash your face with water from a cracked clay jug, tepid, faintly metallic, drawn yesterday from the public fountain where stray dogs lap and children splash without a care. No mirror here. You rake fingers through your hair, feeling the grit of Rome's dust already reclaiming you. Breakfast calls, though it's no feast fit for senators. You tear yesterday's loaf, hard as a legionary's shield, and soften it in a cup of posca, that sour blend of vinegar water that kills thirst and germs alike, tasting like regret with a hint of herbs if the gods smiled on the vendor. A few olives, wrinkled but sharp, or a spoonful of pulse left from last night's meager pot complete the meal. You chew slowly, savoring the quiet before the storm, as the city stirs. A child's cry echoes from below, a vendor's first shout pierces the air like a spear, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer signals the forge's rebirth. Dressed in your lone tunic, patched at the elbows, belted with frayed rope, you step out, the wooden stairs creaking underfoot like old bones. The street greets you with its familiar assault, the slosh of slop from an upper window, a lazy cave trailing behind, the buzz of flies over a fishmonger's stall, and the warm waft of baking bread from the communal oven teasing dreams of fullness you'll chase all day. You're bound for work, perhaps the docks, where ships groan with grain from Egypt, or the forum's edges, hauling stone for some emperor's latest vanity. The pay? A handful of bronze, enough to fend off hunger's growl, but never the landlord's glare.
A coin or two will be your reward, enough for a crust of bread and a sip of posca at a popina, one of those smoky taverns where laborers gather to trade stories and drown the day's ache. You pause by the riverbank, wiping sweat.
A night breeze stirs,
and you wonder if he's watching you, a lone figure in Rome's vast tapestry, your small life a thread in his endless weave. Further on, you glimpse a lararium, a household shrine tucked in a baker's shop, its door ajar. Tiny figurines of the lares, guardians of the home, stand beside a statuette of Fortuna, her wheel promising luck or ruin with a spin. The baker, still awake, lights a twig of rosemary, its sharp scent mingling with the night's damp. You've no shrine of your own, your nook's too small, but you carry the lares in your heart, their protection a hope against the fires and fevers that haunt the insula's halls. You nod to the baker, who offers a tired smile, and move on, feeling the god's faint presence like a hand on your shoulder.
The Roman dawn creeps in like a thief, slipping through the cracks in your insula's walls with a chill that seeps into your bones. You stir on your straw cot, the ropes beneath you groaning in protest, as if echoing the city's own reluctant awakening. The air hangs thick with the mingled scents of yesterday's pulse and the faint, acrid smoke from a neighbor's dying brazier. Outside, the first carts rumble over cobblestones, their wheels grinding like the mills of fate, while a rooster's crow pierces the haze, summoning the day with unyielding insistence. Let this awakening wrap you softly, its rhythms a gentle tide pulling you from dreams into Rome's unyielding embrace, where every breath is a quiet victory over the night. Your eyes flutter open to the dim glow filtering through that eternal hole in the roof, a makeshift skylight courtesy of some long-gone storm or careless fist. The room, your sliver of empire, is still, save for the soft snores of your roommates, one curled like a question mark against the wall, the other sprawled with the abandon of exhaustion. You rise quietly, your tunic rumpled and stiff from sleep's sweat, and splash your face with water from a cracked clay jug, tepid, faintly metallic, drawn yesterday from the public fountain where stray dogs lap and children splash without a care. No mirror here. You rake fingers through your hair, feeling the grit of Rome's dust already reclaiming you. Breakfast calls, though it's no feast fit for senators. You tear yesterday's loaf, hard as a legionary's shield, and soften it in a cup of posca, that sour blend of vinegar water that kills thirst and germs alike, tasting like regret with a hint of herbs if the gods smiled on the vendor. A few olives, wrinkled but sharp, or a spoonful of pulse left from last night's meager pot complete the meal. You chew slowly, savoring the quiet before the storm, as the city stirs. A child's cry echoes from below, a vendor's first shout pierces the air like a spear, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer signals the forge's rebirth. Dressed in your lone tunic, patched at the elbows, belted with frayed rope, you step out, the wooden stairs creaking underfoot like old bones. The street greets you with its familiar assault, the slosh of slop from an upper window, a lazy cave trailing behind, the buzz of flies over a fishmonger's stall, and the warm waft of baking bread from the communal oven teasing dreams of fullness you'll chase all day. You're bound for work, perhaps the docks, where ships groan with grain from Egypt, or the forum's edges, hauling stone for some emperor's latest vanity. The pay? A handful of bronze, enough to fend off hunger's growl, but never the landlord's glare.
A coin or two will be your reward, enough for a crust of bread and a sip of posca at a popina, one of those smoky taverns where laborers gather to trade stories and drown the day's ache. You pause by the riverbank, wiping sweat from your brow, and catch a glimpse of a merchant's ship its sails taut with promise. For a moment you imagine sailing beyond Rome's grasp, to Alexandria's gleaming lighthouse or the wild shores of Britannia. But the foreman's shout snaps you back. Dreams are for the rich. You have sacks to carry. The Tiber reflects the city's sprawl. Temples gleaming on distant hills, the Colosseum's shadow looming like a sleeping giant, and the endless insulae leaning together as if sharing secrets. A woman nearby sells wilted herbs, her voice cutting through the din. Rosemary for luck, mint for love. You've no coin to spare, but her words spark a memory of your insula's Vesta shrine, its flame of faint hope against the dark. You press on, dodging a cart piled with amphoras, its driver cursing a stray dog that nips at his wheels. The dog, mangy but defiant, reminds you of yourself. Surviving on scraps, yet still here, still moving. Midday looms, and the docks grow quieter as laborers seek shade. You find a spot under a warped awning, sharing a loaf with a fellow porter, a wiry man from Syria who speaks of stars guiding his journey to Rome. His tales of deserts and gods with strange names blend with the river's lap, weaving a tapestry as rich as any senator's mosaic. You nod, half listening, your eyes tracing the Tiber's flow, where a child tosses pebbles, each ripple a fleeting mark on the eternal city. As the sun arcs toward afternoon, you'll return to the docks, your labor a small stitch in Rome's vast fabric. The city's heartbeat, grit, glory, and unspoken dreams, carries you forward, its rhythm softening as the day wears on. Let it guide you now, a gentle current pulling you toward sleep's quiet shore, where the Tiber's whispers become your own.
The Roman afternoon unfurls like a worn scroll, the sun now a blazing chariot high overhead, baking the cobblestones and drawing sweat from every pore. You've left the dock's clamor behind, your shoulders aching from the morning's haul, the Tiber's muddy scent still clinging to your tunic like an unwelcome companion. The city's rhythm shifts, less frantic rush, more languid heat, as laborers seek fleeting shade, and the elite retreat to their shaded atria. Let this golden haze envelop you softly, its warmth a gentle cradle, rocking you toward the quiet whispers of evening, where Rome's stories blend with the fading light, easing you into sleep's warm embrace. Your path leads through the Forum Boarium, the cattle market where beasts low and merchants haggle over hides, horns, and the occasional exotic import from Africa's wilds, a striped zebra or a caged bird with feathers like emeralds. The air thickens here with the musk of animals and the sharp bite of bargaining, voices rising in a cacophony of Latin, Greek, and tongues from beyond the empire's edges. You're not buying, you're passing through, perhaps running an errand for a patron, a wealthy trader who tosses you scraps of work in exchange for your loyalty. Today, it's delivering a sealed scroll to his villa on the Aventine Hill, the parchment heavy with secrets you'll never know. The climb up the hill tests your legs, the path winding past grand homes with frescoed walls and gardens blooming with roses and myrtle. You glimpse slaves tending fountains, their movements graceful yet chained, while a matron in silk lounges on a couch, fanned by a boy with eyes as distant as the Nile. Envy flickers, brief as a spark, but you push it down. Such thoughts invite Juno's jealousy, or worse, the evil eye.
A roadside shrine to Hercules, the hero of labors like yours, offers a moment's pause. You touch its base, murmuring thanks for strength, and press on. The villa's gate swings open at your knock. A doorman's gruff nod your only welcome. You hand over the scroll, receive a curt well done and a copper coin. Your patron's favor, thin as it is, might mean steadier work tomorrow.
Descending, the city sprawls below like a living mosaic. The Circus Maximus's vast oval, where chariots will thunder come festival time. The Palatine's palaces, where emperors plot and poets pine, and the endless rooftops of insulae, red-tiled waves hiding lives like yours. Hunger gnaws now, midday's call pulling you to a popina tucked in a narrow alley. The tavern's dim interior welcomes with the sizzle of sausages and the yeasty tang of beer. You trade your coin for a bowl of lentils stewed with leeks and a hunk of cheese sharp and crumbly. Seated on a rickety stool, you eat amid the hum of conversation. A veteran spinning yarns of Gaul's forests, a washerwoman complaining of endless linens, a gambler eyeing dice with hopeful greed. Their voices weave a tapestry of Rome's underbelly, stories of triumphs small and sorrows shared, reminding you that in this vast city you're not alone. The afternoon wanes, shadows lengthening like fingers reaching for the west. You'll return to the streets soon, perhaps scavenging for odd jobs, a message to run, a load to lift, before evening calls you home. Rome's light softens, its heat yielding to a breeze that carries hints of jasmine from hidden gardens. Let the city's fading glow carry you, a soft current toward rest, where the day's labors dissolve into dreams of distant shores and forgotten glories. If you're still drifting, share where you're listening from and what hour the night claims. Let Rome's ancient warmth guide you to sleep's serene harbor. The Roman evening descends like a velvet cloak, the sun's fiery chariot dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of crimson and gold that fade to twilight's hush. You've trudged back from the Aventine, your feet blistered from the day's wanderings, the scroll delivered, and your pocket a fraction heavier with that meager coin. The city's rhythm softens now, less the roar of markets, more the murmur of hearths igniting, and families gathering in shadowed doorways. The air cools, carrying the scent of roasting chestnuts from a street vendor, and the faint, earthy whisper of the Tiber winding through the dark. Let this twilight serenity enfold you, its gentle pull like a river's current, easing you toward the quiet harbor of dreams, where Rome's tales linger as soft echoes in the night.
Your insula looms ahead, its silhouette a jagged tooth against the fading light, the stairs a familiar ascent into the familiar cramped warmth. You climb carefully, the wood protesting underfoot, and push through the curtained door to your nook. Your roommates are there, one stirring a pot of lentils over a small brazier, the flames dancing like mischievous sprites, the other mending a torn sandal by the lamp's glow, his needle flashing in the dim. You share the day's haul, a few olives bartered on the way home, a crust of bread softened with oil, and stories exchanged like coins, tales of a senator's scandal overheard at the villa, or a gladiator's victory whispered in the popina. The meal is simple, yet in this shared circle it feels like a feast, the lentils warm and earthy, the conversation a balm against the empire's grind. As night deepens, the city's sounds weave a nocturnal tapestry, a flute's melancholy tune from a nearby tavern, the soft coo of pigeons nesting on the roof, and the distant bark of watchdogs patrolling the streets. You extinguish the lamp, saving precious oil, and lie back on your cot, the straw rustling like autumn leaves. The walls, thin as papyrus, let in snippets of neighbors' lives, a child's lullaby, a couple's whispered argument, the rhythmic snore of exhaustion. Above, the stars peek through the roof's gap, eternal watchers like the gods themselves. Jupiter's thunder silent tonight, Luna's silver glow a soft caress on your face. In this quiet hour, your mind drifts to Rome's legends, the ones told around hearths to chase away the dark. Perhaps Romulus and Remus, the wolf-suckled twins who quarreled over the city's founding. Romulus's plow marking the sacred boundary where Remus fell. Or Cincinnatus, the farmer called from his fields to lead as dictator, saving Rome from invaders, only to return humbly to his plow. A tale of virtue that feels worlds away from your own ceaseless toil. These stories, passed like heirlooms, remind you that even emperors rose from humble clay, their fates spun by the same capricious gods who overlook your prayers. Sleep beckons now, heavy as a legionary's shield, pulling you under. The city's heartbeat slows to a whisper, its chaos yielding to night's embrace. Let it carry you, soft as a mother's sigh, to a dreamscape where you walk Rome's streets as a hero, unburdened and free.
The Roman night fully claims the city, its velvet darkness pierced by the flicker of torches along the Via Appia and the distant glow of lamps in grand villas on the hills. You've retreated to your insula's nook, the evening meal's warmth fading in your belly as you lie on the cot, the straw shifting beneath you like a restless sea. The walls, thin and whispering, let in the city's nocturnal symphony, a tavern's muffled song, the soft patter of rain on tiles above, and the occasional cry of a night watchman calling the hour. The air cools, carrying the faint scent of incense from a nearby shrine, mingling with the earthy damp of your room. Let this midnight hush embrace you, its quiet depth a gentle veil, drawing you toward sleep's deepest currents, where Rome's secrets unfold in dreams. Your thoughts wander in the dark, drifting to the city's unseen guardians, the vigiles, Rome's night watch, patrolling with buckets and axes against the ever-looming threat of fire. You've heard their boots echo below, a reassuring thud in the silence, though you've seen too many insulae reduced to ash, families scattering like sparks in the wind. Tonight the streets feel safer, the gods perhaps merciful, and you offer a silent prayer to Somnus, the sleep-bringer, his wings brushing away the day's burdens. In this hour stories surface like ghosts, tales of Nero's golden house, whispered in taverns as a symbol of excess, its vast halls now ruins haunted by the emperor's mad fiddling amid flames, or the legend of Tarpeia, the maiden who betrayed Rome for gold, crushed under shields on the Capitoline, a cautionary whisper that greed invites the rock's wrath. You turn these over in your mind, the myths blending with your own small life, a reminder that even emperors fall, while the plebs endure like the Tiber's endless flow. Sleep descends at last, heavy and unbidden, pulling you under. The city's heartbeat fades to a distant thrum, its chaos yielding to night's peace. Let it carry you, soft as a sigh, to a dream where Rome's streets stretch eternal, unburdened by dawn's demands.
A world of shadows and labor. Imagine Europe long ago, a continent shaped by forests, rivers, and rolling hills, where the sun rose over fields and villages, and the horizon was often dotted with castles and monasteries. The Middle Ages stretched from roughly 500 to 1500 AD, 1,000 years marked by towering cathedrals, feuding kingdoms, and the ebb and flow of war. Life for the average person was harsh, but for women, it was often cruelly unforgiving. Survival depended on work, obedience, and resilience. Food could be scarce, disease common, and every day carried risks unseen by modern eyes. For women, the world was a labyrinth of labor, expectation, and danger. From dawn to dusk, they performed endless chores, bore children under perilous conditions, and navigated a society that valued obedience and subservience over voice or autonomy. Yet even in this grim reality, women found agency, intelligence, and quiet defiance. They nurtured families, ran households, managed estates, and shaped the very culture of their communities. Their lives were harsh, yes, but full of resilience, courage, and subtle power that history often overlooked. This is the story of medieval women, their labor, struggles, dangers, and rare moments of triumph, told in a way that captures the harshness, the sorrow, and the enduring strength that defined their existence. Childhood and growing up. A girl in the Middle Ages entered life into a world that demanded survival over innocence. From the moment she opened her eyes, her future was being shaped by her family, social class, and the rigid structures of medieval society. Childhood, as we understand it today, was fleeting. Girls learned early that life was a cycle of labor, expectation, and obedience, and that mistakes could carry lasting consequences. In peasant households, the day began before sunrise. Women and girls were already awake, tending fires, preparing food, and readying the family for labor. By age 5 or 6, girls were expected to help. They learned to sweep floors, carry water, feed animals, and assist with cooking and baking. Their small hands became skilled at spinning wool and weaving thread, their backs bent under buckets of water and sacks of grain. Work was play only insofar as it taught survival. Running through fields or helping harvest crops often doubled as both instruction and labor. Peasant girls learned by observation and repetition. Mothers were teachers, demonstrating the exact methods of grinding grain, cooking porridge, and milking goats. Mistakes could mean wasted food, spoiled flour, or sick animals, failures that affected the survival of the family. Unlike children today, these girls were never free from responsibility. Leisure existed in whispers, a short moment to watch the clouds, a fleeting game of tag with siblings, or listening to stories whispered by a grandmother. Even then, these moments were framed by duty. Education was scarce. Literacy was rare, especially outside urban centers. Boys might be taught to read or count to help with trade or record keeping, but girls' education focused on domestic skills: cooking, cleaning, sewing, and managing a household. Mastery of these tasks was crucial. A girl who could not spin wool into thread or cook bread properly was seen as failing her family, and in extreme poverty, such failure could be catastrophic.
Life for noble girls was superficially easier, but no less constrained. A noble girl might be educated in reading, writing, music, and etiquette, preparing her for courtly life. She learned languages, religious texts, and the management of a household with dozens of servants. Her days included lessons in embroidery, dancing, and song. Yet the overarching expectation was obedience, beauty, and preparation for marriage. By 12 or 13, a noble girl could already be promised to a husband she had never met. Love was irrelevant.
alliances, and inheritance mattered. The physical reality of childhood was also harsh. Poor nutrition left peasant girls small, thin, and often weakened by illness. Noble girls, while better fed, still faced disease, limited exercise, and strict social expectations. Childhood illnesses, accidents, and epidemics could claim young lives indiscriminately, leaving families grieving the loss of daughters whose futures were only beginning to unfold. Despite hardships, girls found ways to bond, learn, and express themselves. Play, storytelling, and shared work created informal education and communal identity. Peasant girls often learned not just from mothers, but from aunts, older sisters, and neighbors. Knowledge of herbs, local remedies, and practical survival skills were passed down orally. Noble girls absorbed knowledge through tutors and convent schooling, learning social diplomacy and cultural refinement. By adolescence, girls were no longer children in any meaningful sense. Their roles expanded, their responsibilities intensified, and their futures were being written by social necessity. Survival, obedience, and skill were the only guarantees in a world that demanded far more than it offered in return. In this early training, girls learned resilience, patience, and endurance, qualities that would define every aspect of their adult lives. Childhood, therefore, was brief, pressured, and dangerous. It was a period of preparation for labor, motherhood, and survival. Every moment of learning, every chore completed, and every lesson absorbed carried the weight of life or death. In this harsh environment, girls learned that endurance, skill, and intelligence were as vital as strength and health, and that their futures would be measured not by their desires, but by their ability to survive and support those around them.
Marriage and family. As girls left childhood behind, their lives became defined by one inescapable reality: marriage. In the Middle Ages, a girl's value and survival were often measured by her ability to marry well, bear children, and manage a household. Love, choice, or personal preference were rarely considered. Instead, families arranged marriages based on alliances, wealth, and survival. For peasant girls, marriage was primarily about survival and labor. A family sought a husband who could work the land, protect the household, and contribute to the family's collective survival. The bride's dowry, small if it existed at all, might consist of a few chickens, some linens, or a handful of tools. Marriage meant the girl was immediately responsible for the household and farm, cooking, cleaning, tending animals, spinning thread, and helping in the fields. Her body, energy, and skill became integral to the household economy. Childbearing began almost immediately. Girls as young as 12 or 13 were expected to produce heirs, a task fraught with peril. Maternal mortality was high. Childbirth claimed the lives of many women who had barely reached adulthood. Midwives, armed with experience and rudimentary herbal remedies, guided these births, but even their knowledge could not guarantee safety. Complications like hemorrhage, infection, or obstructed labor were often fatal. Women endured repeated pregnancies, sometimes spaced only a year apart, further weakening their bodies. Marriage was also a matter of obedience. Husbands and their families wielded authority, and a woman's life was often dictated by her spouse's will. Divorce was nearly impossible, and legal rights for women were extremely limited. Obedience, submission, and productivity were expected, while resistance or defiance could result in social shame, violence, or loss of support. Women had to navigate these pressures carefully, balancing their own survival against the demands of husbands, in-laws, and societal expectation.
Noble women, meanwhile, lived in gilded cages of duty. Their marriages were strategic tools for political alliances, securing wealth, land, or influence. A young girl might be promised to a distant lord, her personal choice irrelevant. Once married, she entered a household where her primary role was to produce heirs and manage the estate. Education, literacy, and refinement were expected, but so were absolute obedience and loyalty. Failure, whether in producing children, managing servants, or maintaining appearances, could bring scandal or jeopardize her family's status. Motherhood for noble women was equally perilous. Even with the best medical care, childbirth remained dangerous. Repeated pregnancies were exhausting and often left women physically damaged. They also faced emotional burdens. Children might die in infancy, while succession and inheritance created constant pressure to produce surviving heirs. Child-rearing itself was labor-intensive, overseeing tutors, nurses, and servants, teaching etiquette and manners, and ensuring the household ran smoothly. Despite these brutal realities, women found ways to exert influence. Peasant wives could manage farms, negotiate with local lords, and make crucial decisions during their husband's absence. Noble women used their education and networks to navigate court politics, influence family alliances, and manage estates. Even within strict confines, women shaped households, raised children, and contributed to community survival. Their labor, physical, emotional, and intellectual, was often invisible but essential. Marriage also brought complex social dynamics. Relationships with husbands, in-laws, and children required diplomacy and endurance. Domestic disputes could escalate into violence or social isolation. Women had to master negotiation, persuasion, and sometimes subterfuge, protecting themselves and their children from harm while fulfilling expectations. These skills were crucial for survival, particularly for women living without the security of wealth or protection. Childbirth, domestic labor, and social pressures combined to make marriage and family life an ongoing trial. Yet, even in this brutal reality, moments of agency existed. A woman who could manage her household efficiently, protect her children, or maintain social connections gained a degree of respect and influence. These achievements, while often unacknowledged, were remarkable acts of endurance and intelligence.
Marriage and family life in the Middle Ages were neither gentle nor romantic. They were relentless, exhausting, and fraught with danger. Yet they were also spaces where women learned resilience, exercised skill, and occasionally exercised power. In a world that demanded nearly everything from them, these women endured, navigated danger, and preserved life, both their own and the lives of those they loved. Daily life of peasant women. The sun had barely risen over the misty fields, yet the village was already stirring. For peasant women, the day began long before most men left their beds. Their lives were ruled by labor, dictated by the seasons, and punctuated by the constant demands of survival. Leisure was rare, comfort minimal, and danger ever present. Every day was a test of endurance, skill, and patience. In the early hours, women tended to the home and hearth. Fires were lit to cook porridge for children and family members. Milk was drawn from cows and goats, and water was carried in heavy pails from wells or rivers. Breakfast was sparse, often cold bread and watered ale, but it needed to be prepared before fieldwork began. Children assisted where they could, but the majority of household responsibilities rested on the women. After morning chores, the women moved into the fields. Farming was exhausting work, and peasants relied heavily on women for survival. They planted seeds, weeded crops, carried water for irrigation, and harvested grains and vegetables. Summer was the busiest season, filled with long hours under the sun. Women's hands became rough and calloused, their backs bent from bending, lifting, and carrying. They labored alongside men,
Yet their work was often undervalued, assumed as a natural duty rather than essential labor. Meals were prepared on crude hearths, often consisting of coarse bread, porridge, vegetables, and occasionally cheese or meat. Hunger was a constant companion. In years of poor harvest, women rationed food, carefully stretching meager supplies to feed children and elderly family members. Malnutrition weakened bodies, made labor more exhausting, and increased susceptibility to disease. Yet women endured, finding creative ways to feed their families with limited resources.
Hygiene was minimal. Clothes were rarely washed thoroughly, and baths were infrequent due to scarce water and the belief that cold water could harm health. This lack of cleanliness, combined with crowded living conditions, spread lice, fleas, and infections. Women managed these conditions with herbs, combs, and vigilance, constantly fighting invisible enemies while performing visible labor. Child-rearing added another layer of responsibility. Peasant women raised multiple children while simultaneously maintaining the household and fields. Infants were at constant risk from disease, malnutrition, and accidents. Mothers worked tirelessly, often carrying infants in slings while completing tasks. Older children assisted, learning the skills required for survival through necessity rather than formal education. Women also maintained livestock, feeding, cleaning, and milking cows, goats, and chickens. Animals were central to survival, providing milk, eggs, meat, and labor. Caring for them demanded both strength and knowledge, understanding feeding schedules, birthing, and illnesses. Livestock failures could devastate a family, and women were often at the forefront of preventing such disasters. Evenings were not a reprieve. After long days in fields and kitchens, women tended to chores around the home, prepared dinner, and supervised children's routines. They repaired clothing, stored grains, and ensured that the family was safe and provisioned for the night. Fireside moments, rare and brief, allowed storytelling, communal singing, or shared reflection. These small rituals provided mental rest, emotional sustenance, and a fragile sense of connection to family and community. The seasonal cycle dictated every aspect of life. Spring meant planting and tending crops. Summer demanded irrigation and weeding. Autumn brought harvests and food preservation. Winter was a struggle against cold, illness, and scarcity. Each season presented unique dangers. Floods, famine, and disease struck unpredictably, and women bore the responsibility of keeping their families alive through preparation, care, and endurance.
Despite the harshness, women created communities. They shared knowledge of herbs, remedies, and cooking techniques. Midwives taught essential skills. Neighbors exchanged advice about planting, livestock, and family care. Through shared labor, women formed bonds that offered protection, emotional support, and survival strategies. Solidarity among women was one of the few shields against a brutal, unrelenting world. Peasant life was exhausting, dangerous, and often thankless. Women worked from dawn to dusk, endured hunger, disease, and harsh weather, and were expected to raise healthy children while managing households and farms. Yet in their labor, resilience, and care, women preserved life and community. Every day survived was a testament to their strength, resourcefulness, and unyielding spirit. In the relentless cycle of daily life, women found subtle victories. A successful harvest, a well-fed child, or a healthy animal provided tangible evidence of their skill. Even in the most modest achievements, there was quiet triumph, a reminder that survival, despite overwhelming odds, was possible through intelligence, courage, and perseverance.
Noblewomen and court life. Life behind castle walls appeared luxurious compared to the peasant village. Soft beds, heavy curtains, rich foods, and attendants to handle chores. Yet this apparent comfort was a gilded cage, and noble women were far from free. Their daily existence revolved around duty, appearance, and survival in a world ruled by male authority and social expectation. Noble girls began education early. Unlike peasant girls, they learned reading, writing, music, and languages, often Latin and French. Tutors guided them in etiquette, theology, and household management. Lessons in embroidery, dancing, and singing were not mere refinements, they were essential skills for a woman who would one day manage a household, host guests, and navigate courtly life. Success was measured in grace, intelligence, and the ability to maintain appearances under constant scrutiny. Despite the harshness, women created communities. They shared knowledge of herbs, remedies, and cooking techniques. Midwives taught essential skills. Neighbors exchanged advice about planting, livestock, and family care. Through shared labor, women formed bonds that offered protection, emotional support, and survival strategies. Solidarity among women was one of the few shields against a brutal, unrelenting world. Peasant life was exhausting, dangerous, and often thankless. Women worked from dawn to dusk, endured hunger, disease, and harsh weather, and were expected to raise healthy children while managing households and farms. Yet in their labor, resilience, and care, women preserved life and community. Every day survived was a testament to their strength, resourcefulness, and unyielding spirit. In the relentless cycle of daily life, women found subtle victories. A successful harvest, a well-fed child, or a healthy animal provided tangible evidence of their skill. Even in the most modest achievements, there was quiet triumph, a reminder that survival, despite overwhelming odds, was possible through intelligence, courage, and perseverance. Noblewomen and court life. Life behind castle walls appeared luxurious compared to the peasant village. Soft beds, heavy curtains, rich foods, and attendants to handle chores. Yet this apparent comfort was a gilded cage, and noble women were far from free. Their daily existence revolved around duty, appearance, and survival in a world ruled by male authority and social expectation. Noble girls began education early. Unlike peasant girls, they learned reading, writing, music, and languages, often Latin and French. Tutors guided them in etiquette, theology, and household management. Lessons in embroidery, dancing, and singing were not mere refinements, they were essential skills for a woman who would one day manage a household, host guests, and navigate courtly life. Success was measured in grace, intelligence, and the ability to maintain appearances under constant scrutiny. Marriage for noblewomen was primarily strategic. Alliances were arranged to secure wealth, land, or political influence. A girl might be promised to a lord in infancy, long before she understood the meaning of love or partnership. The wedding itself was a carefully orchestrated event. Gifts exchanged, feasts held, and ceremonies designed to assert social hierarchy and political intent. Love was optional. Duty was mandatory. Once married, noblewomen managed vast households. Servants, cooks, maids, and stewards fell under their supervision. Meals had to be prepared according to protocol. Linens washed and stored meticulously. Ceremonies and religious observances organized. The work was not physical, like that of peasant women, but it demanded constant mental focus, organizational skill, and strategic diplomacy. A mismanaged household could tarnish a family's reputation or weaken alliances. Court life was another layer of pressure.
Noblewomen were expected to participate in dances, entertain guests, and observe strict etiquette. Every gesture, word, and expression was noticed and interpreted. Gossip could undermine influence. Compliments could strengthen it. Social intelligence was as critical as domestic skill. Women used subtlety, wit, and alliances to protect themselves and enhance family standing. The ability to maneuver within these constraints was essential for survival and influence.
Noble women also found avenues of authority. Some, like Eleanor of Aquitaine, wielded political influence, advised kings, and even led armies. Others managed estates with precision, negotiating with tenants, collecting rents, and maintaining economic stability. Widows, particularly, could inherit authority over lands and businesses, temporarily gaining power unavailable to married women. These exceptions, though rare, highlight the latent potential for autonomy in a society that otherwise constrained female agency. Religion played a crucial role. Noble women were expected to be pious, attending church, sponsoring religious projects, and demonstrating virtue. Many channeled intellect and energy into convents, patronage of religious institutions, and charitable works. These activities enhanced prestige and provided socially sanctioned opportunities for influence and legacy building. Despite privilege, noble life was not free from danger or hardship. Political intrigue, epidemics, and household management could overwhelm even the most capable woman. Pressure to produce heirs, maintain appearances, and navigate court dynamics created constant stress. Social missteps could lead to scandal or diminished influence. Personal desire and ambition were often suppressed to meet family and societal expectations. Yet within these constraints, noble women found subtle forms of power. They managed finances, influenced marriages, advised rulers, and preserved cultural and artistic traditions. Their intelligence, diplomacy, and foresight shaped not only their households, but occasionally kingdoms. Life in the castle demanded endurance, patience, and cunning, a different but no less arduous form of labor than the toil of peasant women. In essence, noble women lived in comfort, yet under constant surveillance and expectation. Their lives were luxurious in appearance, but tightly controlled, with freedom measured in small acts of influence, strategic negotiation, and intellectual engagement. Survival required grace under pressure, skill in management, and the ability to wield subtle power in a world dominated by men and rigid social hierarchy. Noble women also found avenues of authority. Some, like Eleanor of Aquitaine, wielded political influence, advised kings, and even led armies. Others managed estates with precision, negotiating with tenants, collecting rents, and maintaining economic stability. Widows, particularly, could inherit authority over lands and businesses, temporarily gaining power unavailable to married women. These exceptions, though rare, highlight the latent potential for autonomy in a society that otherwise constrained female agency. Religion played a crucial role. Noble women were expected to be pious, attending church, sponsoring religious projects, and demonstrating virtue.
Many channeled intellect and energy into convents, patronage of religious institutions, and charitable works. These activities enhanced prestige and provided socially sanctioned opportunities for influence and legacy building. Despite privilege, noble life was not free from danger or hardship. Political intrigue, epidemics, and household management could overwhelm even the most capable woman. Pressure to produce heirs, maintain appearances, and navigate court dynamics created constant stress. Social missteps could lead to scandal or diminished influence. Personal desire and ambition were often suppressed to meet family and societal expectations. Yet within these constraints, noble women found subtle forms of power. They managed finances, influenced marriages, advised rulers, and preserved cultural and artistic traditions. Their intelligence, diplomacy, and foresight shaped not only their households, but occasionally kingdoms. Life in the castle demanded endurance, patience, and cunning, a different but no less arduous form of labor than the toil of peasant women. In essence, noble women lived in comfort, yet under constant surveillance and expectation. Their lives were luxurious in appearance, but tightly controlled, with freedom measured in small acts of influence, strategic negotiation, and intellectual engagement. Survival required grace under pressure, skill in management, and the ability to wield subtle power in a world dominated by men and rigid social hierarchy.
Religion and convents. In the medieval world, religion was more than belief. It was the framework of daily life. Every action, from work to marriage, from birth to death, was guided by faith, rituals, and the expectations of the church. For women, religion was both sanctuary and constraint, offering spaces of learning and independence, while reinforcing obedience and social control. For many girls and women, religious observance began at home. Daily prayers, blessings, and participation in holy days structured life from morning to night. Families observed festivals, saints' days, and church ceremonies, providing brief respite from labor while reinforcing moral and social codes. Faith dictated behavior. Modesty, piety, and service were virtues, while disobedience, ambition, or desire could be deemed sinful. Convents offered an alternative path. For some women, joining a convent meant escaping the constraints of marriage, domestic labor, or dangerous rural life. Within monastery walls, women could pursue education, literacy, and spiritual development. They studied Latin, copied manuscripts, and practiced music and art. They learned philosophy, theology, and medicine, knowledge rarely available to women outside the cloister. Convents were centers of culture, learning, and social authority, albeit within rigid religious confines. Life inside a convent was highly regimented. Nuns followed strict daily schedules of prayer, work, and reflection. Vigils began before dawn, with chanting and meditation in cold, dimly lit chapels. Labor included tending gardens, preparing meals, cleaning, and producing textiles. Every action was guided by spiritual discipline. While less physically taxing than peasant labor, convent life demanded endurance, obedience, and rigorous focus. Deviations could result in reprimand or social isolation. Religion and convents. In the medieval world, religion was more than belief. It was the framework of daily life. Every action, from work to marriage, from birth to death, was guided by faith, rituals,
and the expectations of the church. For women, religion was both sanctuary and constraint, offering spaces of learning and independence, while reinforcing obedience and social control. For many girls and women, religious observance began at home. Daily prayers, blessings, and participation in holy days structured life from morning to night. Families observed festivals, saints' days, and church ceremonies, providing brief respite from labor while reinforcing moral and social codes. Faith dictated behavior. Modesty, piety, and service were virtues, while disobedience, ambition, or desire could be deemed sinful. Convents offered an alternative path. For some women, joining a convent meant escaping the constraints of marriage, domestic labor, or dangerous rural life. Within monastery walls, women could pursue education, literacy, and spiritual development. They studied Latin, copied manuscripts, and practiced music and art. They learned philosophy, theology, and medicine, knowledge rarely available to women outside the cloister. Convents were centers of culture, learning, and social authority, albeit within rigid religious confines. Life inside a convent was highly regimented. Nuns followed strict daily schedules of prayer, work, and reflection. Vigils began before dawn, with chanting and meditation in cold, dimly lit chapels. Labor included tending gardens, preparing meals, cleaning, and producing textiles. Every action was guided by spiritual discipline. While less physically taxing than peasant labor, convent life demanded endurance, obedience, and rigorous focus. Deviations could result in reprimand or social isolation.
Religion, therefore, was a double-edged sword. It offered protection, purpose, education, and refuge, while simultaneously enforcing obedience, limiting freedom, and maintaining social hierarchies. For medieval women, navigating faith required intelligence, discipline, and resilience. Through ritual, service, and subtle agency, women found ways to exert influence, preserve knowledge, and survive in a world both brutal and devout. In summary, religion was central to women's lives, providing sanctuary and community, offering education and influence, yet restricting personal freedom. Convents and faith-based roles allowed for rare independence, while daily observance reinforced social and gender expectations. Women's resilience in this space reflects both their adaptability and the enduring strength required to survive, thrive, and leave a lasting mark on history.
Childbirth was perhaps the greatest threat. Maternal mortality rates were staggering. Some estimates suggest that 1 in 10 women died in childbirth. Complications like hemorrhage, infection, and obstructed labor were common. Midwives, often experienced women in the community, used herbal remedies, prayers, and traditional techniques to assist births. Even so, outcomes were uncertain. Infant mortality was high, and grief was a constant companion for mothers who lost children shortly after birth. Repeated pregnancies compounded risks, leaving women weakened, exhausted, and vulnerable to further illness. Illness itself was omnipresent. Fevers, respiratory infections, and gastrointestinal diseases were common, and medical knowledge was limited. Remedies included herbs, poultices, and ritualistic prayers, but treatments were often ineffective. Hospitals, where they existed, were rudimentary, serving mainly the poor, pilgrims, or those unable to care for themselves. Even wealth and status could not guarantee safety from epidemics such as the plague, which struck indiscriminately and caused widespread fear and death. Daily labor also threatened health. Peasant women carried heavy loads, worked long hours in fields, and managed animals. Noble women oversaw households and estates, but their labor was still mentally and physically taxing. Accidents were common, burns from open fires, cuts from sharp tools, and injuries from heavy lifting or unstable structures. Even small injuries could become life-threatening in a world without antibiotics or sterile medical care. Mental health was another invisible burden. Constant labor, social pressures, childbearing, and the unpredictability of life created chronic stress and anxiety. Women bore responsibility for family survival, household management, and community obligations, often without respite. The weight of these expectations required resilience, adaptability, and mental fortitude. Some women turned to herbal knowledge and traditional medicine to protect themselves and others. Midwives and healers held critical roles in communities, combining practical experience with spiritual guidance. Their skills saved lives, offered comfort, and provided rare autonomy. Yet this knowledge also attracted suspicion. Accusations of witchcraft or maleficence could arise, endangering both the healer and those seeking help. Despite the perils women endured, survival required vigilance, ingenuity, and cooperation. Communities shared knowledge about remedies, food preservation, and childcare practices. Women relied on networks of support, learning from mothers, aunts, neighbors, and other female figures to navigate the dangers of daily life. In short, health and survival were constant struggles for medieval women. Every day brought physical labor, disease, and risk, yet also opportunities to display intelligence, skill, and resilience. Their ability to endure exhaustion, illness, and childbirth speaks to extraordinary fortitude. Life was fragile, yet women persevered, sustaining families and communities under conditions that would challenge even the strongest modern imagination. The medieval woman's body was her tool, her weapon, and her battlefield. Protecting it, nurturing it, and enduring its trials defined existence. Through sheer endurance, knowledge, and unyielding determination, women survived in a world that demanded nearly everything from them, often offering little in return. Work outside home. While much of a medieval woman's life centered on domestic duties, some ventured beyond the home, engaging in labor, trade, and crafts that offered rare glimpses of autonomy. These women navigated a precarious balance. Independence came with risk, but it also provided opportunities for influence, income, and social connection. In villages, women were essential to local economies. They brewed ale, baked bread, spun wool, and wove cloth, skills that were vital for family survival and local trade. Market days were often laid by women selling goods, bartering produce, or trading handcrafted items. Every transaction required negotiation, vigilance, and social skill, especially for widows or unmarried women who relied solely on commerce for survival. Women's labor sustained communities, though it was rarely celebrated or well compensated.
Craft guilds, primarily male-dominated, sometimes admitted women, especially in textiles, baking, or brewing. Widows often inherited their husbands' businesses, assuming authority and responsibility. This inheritance allowed temporary independence, enabling women to manage apprentices, produce goods, and negotiate trade. However, their position remained vulnerable. Male guild members could challenge authority, and societal expectations demanded that women's influence remain circumscribed. Travel for work carried significant danger. Roads were poorly maintained, and travelers faced threats from bandits, soldiers, and wild animals. Women transporting goods between villages risked theft, assault, or harassment. Survival required knowledge of safe routes, alliances with other merchants, and the ability to assess risk. Despite these perils, trade provided women with rare opportunities to expand influence, earn money, and gain experience beyond their immediate households. Urban centers offered slightly more independence. Women could run small shops, participate in guild activities, and hire apprentices. Markets, fairs, and urban networks created spaces where women could operate semi-autonomously. Success demanded intelligence, resilience, and strategic social interactions. Even in male-dominated marketplaces, women could negotiate contracts, influence trade practices, and establish reputations. These achievements, though limited by social norms, reflect remarkable resourcefulness and adaptability. Work outside the home also offered opportunities for community and solidarity. Women shared trade knowledge, recipes, medicinal remedies, and childcare techniques. Mentorship and cooperation provided social support and protection against exploitation or danger in a world that often sought to constrain them. Craft guilds, primarily male-dominated, sometimes admitted women, especially in textiles, baking, or brewing. Widows often inherited their husbands' businesses, assuming authority and responsibility. This inheritance allowed temporary independence, enabling women to manage apprentices, produce goods, and negotiate trade. However, their position remained vulnerable. Male guild members could challenge authority, and societal expectations demanded that women's influence remain circumscribed. Travel for work carried significant danger. Roads were poorly maintained, and travelers faced threats from bandits, soldiers, and wild animals. Women transporting goods between villages risked theft, assault, or harassment. Survival required knowledge of safe routes, alliances with other merchants, and the ability to assess risk. Despite these perils, trade provided women with rare opportunities to expand influence, earn money, and gain experience beyond their immediate households. Urban centers offered slightly more independence. Women could run small shops, participate in guild activities,
and hire apprentices. Markets, fairs, and urban networks created spaces where women could operate semi-autonomously. Success demanded intelligence, resilience, and strategic social interactions. Even in male-dominated marketplaces, women could negotiate contracts, influence trade practices, and establish reputations. These achievements, though limited by social norms, reflect remarkable resourcefulness and adaptability. Work outside the home also offered opportunities for community and solidarity. Women shared trade knowledge, recipes, medicinal remedies, and childcare techniques. Mentorship and cooperation provided social support and protection against exploitation or danger in a world that often sought to constrain them.
Despite the challenges, labor outside domestic spaces offered women a measure of agency. Income could secure autonomy, provide better nutrition or clothing, and sometimes protect children from destitution. Control over trade or craft production allowed women to influence their immediate environment, navigate social hierarchies, and assert subtle authority. While the work was arduous and risks were high, it also revealed women's ingenuity and resilience. Notably, work outside the home was not without social scrutiny. Women who appeared too independent risked gossip, moral judgment, or legal challenges. Their labor had to be justified as necessity or framed within socially acceptable roles. Successful women carefully balanced enterprise with propriety, navigating a fine line between autonomy and social censure. Ultimately, women who worked beyond domestic confines were essential to medieval survival. They bridged households and communities, sustained economies, and, in rare cases, achieved autonomy. Their labor, often invisible in historical records, was critical, reflecting endurance, intelligence, and courage. In a world that demanded obedience and offered few rewards, working outside the home provided medieval women with one of the few avenues to assert independence and preserve their family survival. Violence, war, and law. Medieval Europe was a world shaped by violence. Wars, raids, feuds, and crime were daily realities, and women, whether noble, peasant, or urban, were rarely spared. Their lives were defined not only by labor and duty, but also by constant vulnerability to physical harm, exploitation, and legal injustice. Domestic violence was a grim reality for many women. Husbands had legal authority over wives, and physical punishment, though sometimes moderated by custom, was socially tolerated. Abuse could include beatings, confinement, verbal cruelty, or denial of sustenance. Legal recourse was limited. Women who reported abuse risked ridicule, disbelief, or retaliation. Their labor had to be justified as necessity or framed within socially acceptable roles. Successful women carefully balanced enterprise with propriety, navigating a fine line between autonomy and social censure. Legal vulnerabilities compounded danger. Courts often favored men in disputes over property, inheritance, or assault. Crimes against women, rape, theft, or assault, were inconsistently prosecuted, and accusers' testimonies often carried more weight than the victims'. Conversely, women could be harshly punished for perceived moral or social transgressions, including adultery, heresy, or witchcraft. A single accusation could lead to fines, imprisonment, or even execution. Navigating the legal system required intelligence, social connections, and sometimes luck. Life in siege or occupied territory was especially perilous. Women managed households under extreme stress, cared for the wounded, and secured food and water during blockades. Those in castles or walled towns had relative safety, but even these protections could be breached. Disease, starvation, and psychological trauma were constant companions. Peasant women outside fortified areas faced even greater risks, balancing the protection of family
with the danger of venturing into hostile territory for essential resources. Social violence and reputation were ever-present threats. Gossip, jealousy, and social enforcement could damage a woman's standing or safety. A misstep, real or perceived, could lead to ostracism or physical violence. Women had to navigate social hierarchies carefully, balancing obedience and self-preservation against personal dignity and survival. Yet, even amid brutality, women found ways to resist and endure. Some negotiated with lords, raiders, or neighbors to protect families. Others hid valuables, secured escape routes, or used wit and diplomacy to avert danger. Some noblewomen led defenses during sieges, directed estate security, or mediated conflicts, demonstrating courage and intelligence under extreme pressure. Ordinary women often managed survival strategies quietly, coordinating communal support networks, tending wounds, or safeguarding children.
The law and society provided few guarantees, but resilience, ingenuity, and alliances became critical tools for survival. Women learned to read danger in subtle gestures, anticipate social or physical threats, and use relationships strategically. Endurance was as much about mental acumen as physical strength. Survival required constant alertness, adaptability, and courage. In conclusion, medieval women existed in a world where danger was omnipresent. Domestic abuse, warfare, raids, and legal inequities created constant threats, demanding intelligence, vigilance, and endurance. Yet even in such a hostile environment, women found ways to navigate peril, protect themselves and their families, and assert agency where possible. Their lives were a testament to resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet courage required to endure a world dominated by violence and male authority. Culture, entertainment, and social life. Life in the Middle Ages was harsh, relentless, and often unforgiving. Yet, even in the most brutal conditions, women carved out spaces for culture, entertainment, and social connection. These moments were fleeting, fragile, but crucial, offering relief from labor, nurturing relationships, and allowing women to express identity beyond domestic duty.
Storytelling and oral tradition were vital for both education and entertainment. By the hearth, women passed down tales of saints, heroes, and mythical creatures. Stories taught lessons about morality, survival, and resilience, while also offering mental escape from physical labor. Mothers and grandmothers served as custodians of cultural knowledge, teaching younger generations through narrative. Stories of bravery, trickery, and perseverance inspired, entertained, and educated simultaneously, preserving culture and identity across generations. Music and song provided emotional sustenance. Peasant women sang while tending fields, spinning wool or cooking, transforming repetitive labor into rhythmic, shared experiences. Noble women learned to play instruments, sing, and compose poetry. Music allowed expression of personal feeling, subtle commentary on social events, and cultivation of aesthetic refinement. Songs served as both entertainment and social glue, reinforcing communal ties and cultural continuity. Friendship and community networks were lifelines. Women supported each other through shared labor, childcare, and counsel. Midwives, healers, and experienced mothers passed on essential survival knowledge. Markets and guilds created opportunities for social interaction, collaboration, and sometimes competition. These networks provided protection, mentorship, and emotional sustenance, helping women navigate a harsh, hierarchical world. Domestic arts as entertainment offered creative outlets. Sewing, embroidery, weaving, and decorating homes were not only practical but also expressive. Noble women crafted elaborate garments,
tapestries, and illuminated manuscripts. Peasant women dyed fabrics, spun threads, and decorated hearths or kitchens with care. These accomplishments, while often overlooked, provided satisfaction, pride, and a sense of accomplishment, subtly asserting agency and skill. Rituals and religious observances also played a role in social life. Processions, church services, and pilgrimages allowed women to connect with communities beyond their immediate households. These events fostered spiritual reflection, cultural participation, and social networking. They also reinforced moral guidance, offered protection through communal identity, and provided occasions for women to exercise influence within acceptable social bounds.
Even in oppressive circumstances, moments of leisure and creativity shaped identity. Games, small gatherings, storytelling circles, and seasonal celebrations allowed women to step outside strict domestic expectations, fostering resilience and emotional well-being. Humor, music, and storytelling became subtle acts of resistance, ways to assert individuality and maintain mental health in a world of constant labor and danger. In essence, medieval women balanced relentless work with moments of creativity, joy, and connection. Festivals, music, storytelling, and friendships offered refuge, nurtured resilience, and strengthened communities. These cultural spaces were not trivial. They were acts of survival. Within them, women asserted their presence, influence, and humanity, leaving an enduring imprint on medieval life that transcended hardship. Exceptional women. Amid the relentless hardships of medieval life, a few women transcended the rigid constraints of society. These exceptional women, whether queens, warriors, healers, scholars, or rebels, demonstrated courage, intelligence, and resilience that allowed them to influence history in ways their peers rarely could. Their stories illuminate the extraordinary potential of women, even in a world designed to limit their power.
Warriors and defenders occasionally emerged in a world dominated by men. While warfare was primarily male, women sometimes defended castles, organized militias, or even took to the battlefield. Legends of female warriors, though exceptional, inspired communities and demonstrated that courage and leadership were not confined to men. Some women disguised themselves as men to fight. Others led defense efforts when circumstances demanded, proving that bravery could manifest in both overt and subtle forms. Healers and midwives held essential roles in medieval communities. Their knowledge of herbs, medicine, and childbirth was critical to survival. Women healers preserved vital knowledge about remedies and treatments, often at personal risk. Occasions of witchcraft or malpractice were common, yet these women's expertise saved countless lives. Their labor blended science, intuition, and care, reflecting intellectual rigor and resilience, often unacknowledged in historical records. Scholars, mystics, and educators found opportunities for influence in religious or academic spaces. Convents and monasteries allowed women to pursue intellectual growth, literacy, and spiritual insight. Hildegard of Bingen, for example, was a composer, mystic, and medical writer whose works spanned theology, music, and natural science. Women like her challenged gender norms, proving that intellectual and spiritual authority was not exclusively male. They contributed to scholarship, preserved cultural knowledge, and left legacies that persisted far beyond their lifetimes. Rebels, survivors, and innovators demonstrated resilience in everyday life. Peasant women, widows, and merchants navigated complex social hierarchies, negotiating with local lords, defending families, and managing estates.
Even without formal power, they exercised agency through strategy, endurance, and intelligence. Their survival was often invisible in records, yet it was crucial to the functioning of communities, the economy, and culture. Exceptional women thrived because they mastered negotiation, intelligence, and adaptability. They found ways to exercise authority, influence decision-making, and protect others, often within extreme limitations. Their achievements remind us that female agency existed even in restrictive societies, though it required ingenuity, courage, and relentless perseverance.
The stories of these women reveal that resilience took many forms: political, intellectual, spiritual, and physical. Noble women shaped nations, warriors defended homes, healers preserved lives, scholars expanded knowledge, and everyday women ensured survival. Their strength was often quiet, their labor invisible, and their influence subtle, yet it shaped the world around them in profound ways. Even amid brutal labor, domestic oppression, limited legal rights, and constant danger, exceptional women illuminated paths of courage, creativity, and intelligence. They remind us that medieval life, though often brutal, was not devoid of agency, inspiration, or legacy. Their lives stand as enduring examples of human potential, determination, and resilience in a world that demanded everything while granting little in return. The brutal life of medieval women, continuous narrative. Imagine Europe long ago, a continent of forests, rivers, and rolling hills where the sun rose over villages and castles, and the horizon was often dotted with stone towers and church spires. The Middle Ages stretched for roughly 1,000 years, marked by towering cathedrals, feuding kingdoms, and the ebb and flow of war. Life for the average person was harsh, but for women it was often cruelly unforgiving. Survival depended on labor, obedience, and resilience. Food was scarce, disease rampant, and every day carried risks unseen by modern eyes. Women navigated a labyrinth of work, expectation, and danger, from dawn to dusk, bearing children under perilous conditions and managing households that required constant vigilance.
Childhood for girls was brief and demanding. In peasant households, mornings began before sunrise. Girls as young as 5 learned to sweep, carry water, feed animals, and assist with cooking. Their small hands spun wool and wove thread. Their backs bent under heavy buckets and sacks of grain. Mistakes could affect the survival of the family. Education focused on domestic skill rather than literacy. Leisure was fleeting, found in short games, watching clouds, or listening to grandmother's stories. Noble girls, meanwhile, received lessons in reading, writing, music, and etiquette, preparing them for court life. Yet even these girls were bound by expectation, often promised in marriage at a young age. Childhood, for all girls, was preparation for survival, labor, and obedience, a brief period before the responsibilities of adult life took hold. Marriage became the defining reality as girls grew older. For peasants, it meant labor, childbearing, and obedience. A husband provided security and labor. The bride contributed to household management, farm work, and the production of food and goods. Childbirth began early and often, with maternal mortality rates high and infant survival uncertain. Noble women faced marriages arranged for political or economic gain. Love was secondary to alliance. They managed households, oversaw servants, and were pressured to produce heirs. Pregnancy was exhausting and dangerous. Failure to bear children could bring shame. Both peasant and noble women learned endurance, patience, and strategic thinking through marriage and family life, balancing personal survival with societal expectation. Daily life for peasant women was relentless. Dawn brought fire tending, cooking, milking, and fetching water. Fields demanded planting, weeding, and harvesting, with hands calloused and backs bent. Meals were sparse and nutrition limited, hygiene rudimentary, and clothing infrequently cleaned. Children added another layer of responsibility. Infants were carried while chores were completed. Livestock required constant attention. Seasonal cycles dictated labor: planting in spring, irrigation and weeding in summer, harvest in autumn, and surviving cold winters with limited food. Yet in these daily trials, women built community through shared knowledge, midwife expertise, and neighborly cooperation, preserving both family and culture.
Noble women, in contrast, lived amid apparent luxury but under intense social and political constraints. Education included reading, writing, languages, music, and etiquette. Marriage was strategic, securing alliances, land, or wealth. Management of large households demanded mental rigor, overseeing servants, preparing meals, organizing ceremonies, and ensuring social appearances. Childbearing remained central, with repeated pregnancies taxing the body. Court life required diplomacy, strategic intelligence, and constant vigilance. Influence existed, but had to be navigated subtly, through estate management, education, patronage, or charitable works. Even amid privilege, noble women endured relentless pressure to conform, perform, and produce heirs. Religion shaped every aspect of women's lives. Daily prayers, feast days, and observance of saints' days structured time and behavior. Convents offered refuge, education, and intellectual pursuit, though within strict vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Women could become scholars, composers, healers, or administrators, achieving influence rare elsewhere. Religious life reinforced obedience and moral expectations, yet also offered spaces for agency, education, and preservation of cultural knowledge. Women healed the sick, assisted in childbirth, and preserved herbal remedies, blending practical skill with spiritual guidance. Faith was simultaneously protective and constraining, shaping behavior while providing purpose. Health and survival were constant struggles. Hygiene was minimal, water scarce and often contaminated. Malnutrition weakened bodies, and childbirth claimed many lives. Disease, infection, and epidemics threatened communities, and medical knowledge was limited. Labor was physically taxing, accidents frequent, and mental strain high. Women relied on intelligence, communal knowledge, and ingenuity to endure. Every day survived was a testament to endurance, skill, and courage. Some women worked beyond domestic confines. Peasant women sold goods at markets, brewed ale, and engaged in trade. Widows could inherit businesses, manage apprentices, and negotiate commerce. Urban centers allowed semi-autonomous labor in shops, guilds, and trade fairs. Travel was dangerous, yet necessary, requiring vigilance and social skill. Work outside the home offered rare agency, income, and influence, despite social scrutiny and potential censure.
Violence permeated life. Domestic abuse was tolerated and legal recourse limited. Wars, raids, and feuds threatened homes and villages. Noble women could be held hostage or used in political schemes. Legal systems favored men, and accusations, whether of moral failings or witchcraft, could destroy women's lives. Survival demanded vigilance, intelligence, and strategic negotiation. Even amid violence, women found ways to protect families, influence outcomes, and exercise resilience. Despite brutality, women created spaces for culture and community. Festivals, storytelling, music, and domestic arts offered mental respite and expression. Friendships,
Mentorship and cooperative networks strengthened survival. Even simple creative acts like embroidery, song, or culinary skill became forms of subtle resistance and self-expression. These cultural spaces nurtured identity, emotional well-being, and social cohesion, preserving humanity amid hardship. Some women transcended societal constraints altogether. Queens like Eleanor of Aquitaine shaped politics and led armies. Warriors defended homes or took to battle. Healers preserved essential knowledge under threat of persecution. Scholars like Hildegard of Bingen advanced theology, medicine, and music. Exceptional women demonstrated that intelligence, courage, and agency could flourish even within extreme limitations. Peasant women, widows, and merchants exerted influence quietly, sustaining communities and families, proving resilience could take many forms. The life of a medieval woman was brutal, demanding, and often perilous. Labor, childbearing, illness, violence, and social constraints defined existence. Yet within these trials, women demonstrated extraordinary endurance, intelligence, and agency. They built communities, preserved culture, protected families, and sometimes transcended societal limitations. Survival itself was an act of courage. Every day endured, every child raised, every household managed, and every skill mastered reflected unyielding strength. These women, often invisible in historical records, were the backbone of medieval society. Their resilience shaped communities, culture, and history itself. In this harsh world of castles, fields, and convents, women navigated extremes, suffering and triumph, labor and creativity, obedience and subtle power. Their lives